What was special about Mani is basically it was never really occupied by any foreign conqueror of Greece. And the other thing that was special about it is that it had a clan-based society. And how this neighborhood was created was essentially when clans fought each other, some of them had to, if they lost the conflict, they had to move out. So there is a neighborhood village that is much larger, and this family here had to move from there over here to resettle after they had potentially lost. So what you see here, the neighborhood itself, essentially all the houses belonged to the same clan. So these two houses were the first houses that the clan built when they moved from the village next doors. So they came here and they built these two houses and that little chapel up there. And then from there it slowly grew out once the family was growing and growing. So you have different families that are related to each other, and usually they would have their own square, their own church, their own olive press, etc., etc. So that would be their coffee shop.
It belonged to this big family, and eventually the three siblings decided to have it as a home for their mother, who is now 91, who was the force in the family.
The matriarch.
Definitely.
When I came, they were sitting outside and having a cup of coffee.
Do you remember when there were tables outside? People
Oh
would
yeah.
sit and
Oh
drink?
yeah. And there was a thing there that you could sit, like this.
Ah, like a bench.
This one wasn't that low.
It was a little higher.
It was higher.
So this was
And,
the main square.
This is the main
This was
square. There was a house over here.
That's gone? You mean that was on top of this?
So yeah,
Those two houses are the very first houses the family built.
This village has other neighborhoods as well, but this neighborhood had this main square, and there would be the coffee shop there and the coffee shop here. This used to be earth. I mean, this is a sort of 80s, rather nasty concrete finished yucky floor, which actually came up far too high, so you can't sit here anymore. But it used to be that everyone would sit out here, the children would play, the women would knit, and then houses, women, children, and everything like that would live above. This is the original floor of the coffee shop, which we kept because we found that it was precious. And you can see it's got all the different signs, and you can also see that in this position here, there used to be a column, which we removed in order to create this big thing.
it was a
A column.
No, key, there. And what was funny about this column is that it had a little table built around it to sit around this column.
You see, they were making coffee.
So this would have been set up with...
If you put these two together, they make a long bench across that wall, which was part of the coffee shop. At some point, they cut them into two separate things, but you can still see that it's...
What would that have been?
They would have put all sorts of things, from wine, oil, to wood for the burner and things like that. And so we had these refurbished, and the old desk.
So this would face the street.
This would face the street and the plaza, and probably have men only in here. There were two different social spaces. One was the men's social space, which would be café and things like that, and they were served. And then there was women's social space, which would be primarily outdoor. It would be called ruga, and it would be like benches. That's what it means. And then there was the back of the house, which is now the kitchen, but it used to be where they would prepare everything from here. And it was pretty segregated. Women were not allowed into here. So the family and the kitchen was mostly accessed through the back door and not through the front.
So the kitchen would have been used for the family as well?
Probably both. Don't imagine family life in the same way that we think of it today. Most of the day, the family would be out in the fields. There was no idea that the family would get together and there was a family space or anything. It was mostly sleeping quarters and basic work. The rest of the time they were outdoors. So this is the original door of the house. That sort of separated the main coffee shop area from the kitchen preparation area and the home, if you like.
Tell me about the kitchen. So what was here before
Well, we don't really know what was here because it had been redone in the 80s, and it was pretty nasty when we got here. And so we had to remove all that. And then we set up this kitchen. As you can see, I mean, it's a funny shape, this room, which is very, very uncharacteristic, because when you have domes, you normally have domes that are equal, they have two parallel walls. Whereas this is strange in that sense because it sort of narrows at that end. Which is probably due to the fact that this was built at a later time, so the neighboring houses already existed, so it just fitted itself, it wedged itself into the gap, if you like. So this is our attempt at the same floor as that. As you can see, the original floors work better than the one that we did.
It's difficult to reproduce, right? And I like how you did this continuity.
We built this but from scratch.
It continues up over.
It continues up over. All of this we built. It was built in plywood, and then it was covered in this, you can hear, can't you? And then it was covered in this cement mix of our own device, which has worked pretty well if you think that it's been here for about 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is that a refrigerator? What's that?
That's a refrigerator, yes.
It makes for a really beautiful surface. Yeah. Yeah.
This is all their produce, by the way.
That's great. I love the stairs. You just kept it all open.
This is the entrance for the women and the family. And they used to be outdoor before they decided they needed a loo. So that's the loo there that they stuck on the end of the stairs there. And then they put in a concrete slab. We changed the door from being an open door into a proper door because we closed it all. And in order to do that, we actually had to eat away at the step. Can you see? This is a small bathroom.
Is a shower, bathroom, all in that space?
It's a shower bathroom. So this was all open when we arrived. And so we needed to close it and to extend it and to stick another bathroom on top.
Okay.
And then in here, you've got another bathroom.
The view is incredible.
So you've got two views in one, really, if you look at it.
And here you really see part of the town, right?
Exactly. So all those houses would be clansmen, essentially, all living next to each other.
This is the place where we are now connects Venice to Egypt and Turkey. So if you think of the commercial marine routes, they would very likely, it's not the only route, but they would very likely arrive here at some point, especially during storms and things like that. So actually piracy was a good main source of income, and in fact it was even legal until about 1840. Wow. Yes. Yeah, there's Rebecca.
We were just looking at the village, so this is your family village.
My husband's family.
And you live
And my village is,
Further down.
all the buildings there weren't there when I was growing up.
At the time, this place here didn't have connection by road to the mainland. The only connection that they did have is by boat.
All those homes that you see over here, there were two homes down there. On this side. And then we had to walk all the way down there to go to Agonicola.
Which is the main port town that you see right there on the coast, and which is where you would connect to the outside world. You would get the boat to go to Kalamata.
And if it wasn't cooperating, then we had to walk 9 hours. And I did it a few times because I was in high school in Kalamata. I wasn't going to waste my days to wait for the sea to calm down before I could travel. Just walk 9 hours.
There is an extensive network of walking paths, cobbled walking paths, that was it really connected all villages, and it was mules and donkeys and everything like that. So there was connection, but there was no vehicle connection, so there were no cars could come.
And so a lot of people left this area in the 1950s, right?
Very many.
Yeah.
Whoever could. We had the war, we had the Civil War afterwards, and we had nothing to eat. So whoever could leave wouldn't stay. You know, this wasn't like this.
What was this like?
It was just little stairs that were coming up. I can tell you where I spend all my day.
Yeah.
This is my sitting room, my dining room, everything. And
you? Yeah.
my bedroom is in there.
There's another bedroom, extra bedroom in there.
You fit a lot into this little.
This wasn't this big. There was one little room, like a sitting room.
Well, the idea was this wall divides the sort of private area from the open space area.
Is this a traditional roof?
We built this on the idea of a traditional roof. The general idea was that whatever we did within the house needed to be low tone and in keeping. They had these divisions that were made out of bamboo and a sort of timber frame. In the middle they had seaweed as insulation. This, unfortunately, we couldn't keep because it was infested with all sorts of alive beings. And so we had to remove all that. And removing that meant we had to remove the ceiling also, which was a light timber structure that was just a flat ceiling. They would do that because then it would create a void between the roof and the actual room, which acted as heat insulation, and it was much easier to heat the house as well that way.
I like the stairs.
I cannot follow you up there.
So we built the roof in order for it to become the railing here,
So that you don't fall over.
because there wasn't that much room.
Did you see this before it was redone? Do you remember this property?
It was altogether different.
Before there were 4 rooms. This is cross-generational here, so you would have 3 generations of people. So I guess that what it would be is 3 bedrooms of the 3 generations: children, couple, parents.
Grandparents.
Yeah, so this is a bed on almost what looks like a pallet.
It is pallets, yes.
Really?
They are real pallets. The only thing is that it took us a while to find pallets that were not treated, because most pallets are treated heavily, and so they're very, very unhealthy to live with. And so Tony wanted a pallet bed. The house had a roof, which was completely closed off by a ceiling. So when we opened it, we realized that most of the woodwork was in a really bad state, so we had to remove it, reinforce the walls and tie them together, so there's quite a lot of tie rods, and then rebuild it. But we chose to use
Reeds.
bamboo, which was the traditional way to build a roof.
Because bamboo grew a lot.
There was a lot of bamboo in the watercourses, so it was easy to cut, but the trees were the difficult bit. The trees, they would cherish the trees. And in fact, again, another lovely story is that when they had a daughter, which was generally not considered the best possible outcome, they would plant cypress trees. So the cypress trees would grow with the girl, and then it would become her dowry. So if you see a house with a very big old cypress tree, it means either that the daughter never got married or she didn't make it to adulthood.
Oh, wow.
And so that's why they're considered such bad luck.
Do your grandchildren sleep up here?
Yeah, they do. When they come, they love to sleep up there. I always have a lot of company. But we go down by the sea a lot with a car.
With a car?
Yeah.
So this is almost like a small apartment.
It is for Rebecca. There's no in the main space. There's no internal connection between the 2 levels. So you sort of go outdoors to go everywhere, really.
To go to the bathroom?
You have to go outdoors.
So you go out to the bathroom across the... Makes you get outside, right?
Before there was just the one by the stairs down there.
Oh, right,
And you know what it is to go from here down there? At least up there I go straight.
That's one of the things you get used to. You can live outdoors here. You can.
So this was a coffee shop. Was there a coffee shop in your village?
Coffee shops, not just one. This was a coffee house. Across the city was a coffee house, and one over there was another. There were 3
So
coffee.
people were drinking a lot of coffee.
Well, they had to get together. What else could you do?
And of course, back then, those coffee shops worked as pubs and corner stores at the same time. So in some cases, you could buy cigarettes or food or snacks or alcohol. You could get your mail there.
You see here, there's just a lot of town that's not. So how many people are in this? There are probably a dozen homes.
In the old days. No. These villages were quite densely populated. So before the war, we might be talking here of a few hundred people. And families were also quite big families. So in a very small house, you would have a lot of people and a few generations of them as well. So this might have been maybe a few hundred, I would say, for sure.
I think close to 1,000 actually.
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
Yes.
Each home had 10 people.
Yeah, something like that.
It was completely abandoned at some point, this area.
thing.
We're talking like 90% of the population left.
Which is quite radical. So you had like 1 or 2 households that were still up and running, and the rest of the village was gone.
So this is the old house.
This is the original house number 2. This was number 1 and this is number 2. They would have a space underneath here that would be primarily for animals.
So they would keep their herds there, sheep, goats.
And what's incredible is that they would have a timber floor over the top with gaps. So during the winter, the heat from the animal bodies would actually heat the people who would sleep above. Can you see that pink stone there?
Yeah.
That is unique to the next village, the village up from here. So that you've got all these pink stones because it was quarried locally.
You can see the date of the house right there.
1697?
So it's quite an old house.
I know, yeah, and it actually in really good shape.
Sort of.
Debatable.
It's a bit precarious at this
Really?
stage,
Okay,
yeah. So this is the oven, can you see?
Oh yeah.
So you can see the old style roof here. This is the original old style roof.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, bamboo reed, yeah.
Okay.
And you can see the oven from the inside actually. So this was kind of like a kitchen area.
Huge pottery.
This pottery came from across. They would bring it by boat. They didn't do them here.
Here you see the wall.
Here you see the wall, and this is actually not seaweed. It's other kind of insulation, but that's
Vegetation.
That's the idea.
But the vegetation, right?
Yes, there you go. Yeah. And then it would have mortar on the outside.
And bamboo.
And bamboo. And then you would go into there. I think we probably can. Try treading on the beams.
Okay. Okay, so that's the stone we see from the outside on the other side there, right?
Yes, but you can see that there are cracks across the corners and the windows and everything like that. Now, those are structurally extremely precarious. When you get diagonal cracks in stonework,
Okay.
stay away.
And you go down there, it's beautiful.
So way back when, there's this huge network of paved pathways. But post-war, unfortunately, to make life easier, I guess, let's put cement all over. And what we are trying to do now, actually, is either take away the concrete or redo the old paving. So this is quite new, actually, in the spirit of the old pathway.
That's beautiful. That looks like a lot of work too.
We researched a lot how these were built. Basically, you build 2 sides to it with the big stones, and then you just use, because there's all this slate, this is a kind of slate. So you use the slate in order to create this, which was, in the old days, it served the purpose of keeping the mule's foot in place on the way down. This was the main connection to the coastline. So this is how you would arrive at the village coming from the coastline. And this would mean mules with all the things that they were carrying, people, everything would come up here. It's very steep, and it needed to be a kind of road that is stable enough and catches your foot as you come up. So that's why they built it in this way, so that it did create little ledges that the animals and people could go back against.
That's the way we used to come, with a mule, because nothing else was coming. There was no street for a car or anything else.
When did the road come in here?
To this village it came in 1976.
That was very late.
And there were always, whenever they arrived in the cities, between the alleyway and the houses, there were always these rain ducts.
And then what they would do is they would put this special sand in between the stones, which is like this type of, like a riverbed type sand.
And that's sort of as a mortar.
Yes.
It isn't mortar, it doesn't really connect it, but it creates a sort of surface that brings in the... One of the important things about all these is that it allows the water through. So it's not this hardscape that you then have to drain and everything like this. It's very healthy. It's a very healthy way of building all this network of streets between the buildings.
Most of this is brand new, but there are parts, some of these stones are the original ones. And of course, when you had more flat areas, you had a completely different paving, which is like these big flagstones. That's original, actually.
I guess there's always plenty of stone in this area. So that's
Yes, endless amount of stone.
And then we have the church over here. My mother-in-law used to take care of all this in the neighborhoods.
And of course, it's quite interesting to see within the family chapel as well.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So that's actually post-Byzantine style. The church might be older, but the painting of these frescoes is from 1785. And then there is another date in here, actually. Oh, no, it's the same date, 1785, yeah. And you can see back there as well. Yes, unfortunately, due to the war and whatnot, these places were just abandoned, so water would come in and just ruin everything. So that was the second chapel that the family built, I guess, when the clan became a bit bigger. That's the crazy thing with Mani, is that you live next to history constantly, you know? And the nature as well is just something else. So the quality of life here, you just don't get it anywhere else.
You know, when I left, I was very little. The whole family went to U.S. This man and that man would come and having coffee with me every morning when I was coming from the U.S. And when I came back, an old lady, that makes me very happy that I was able to come back and see what became of the... I have a pacemaker. After I moved up here, the doctor told me, "What you doing in Greece?" I says, "I go down to the sea most of the day, and in the evening I says, I'm by the mountain." He says, "You mean you breathe the sea air most of the day and then you go to the mountain?" He says, "It's the best thing you do." I said, "I don't do it, like I just have it."
I didn't grow up here, but it's magic. There's something really magic about it. Now, when I get back, and there is a point where you're driving in the mountains and then suddenly you can see all the view. And when I reach that point and I drive over, I think, I'm home. It's just that feeling of belonging, which comes in a very funny way. It's not only about the people, it's about the place as well. It's really magic.